Angela Moraes, the CEO of Kolbe Arte. Kolbe Arte is a company focused on the production and commercialization of sacred art. Leading the business is Angela Moraes, who brings together entrepreneurship, curation, aesthetics, and faith, providing religious pieces for temples, parishes, communities, and also individual devotees. Well, leading a sacred art company requires balance and tradition, respecting canons and chronology, as well as liturgical sensitivity. It's about interpretation, reinterpretation, and staying committed to fidelity, right? A commitment to faith as well. And innovation, especially in the face of competition from imported pieces and those mass-produced as well. The interview with Angela Moraes here at our ExpoCatólica is of interest to you who want to understand the sacred art market. How does the business work? How is it formed? How do you train artisans and artists who make religious pieces? Which materials and techniques are trending? And how does a company in this segment position itself in the face of the sector's industrialization? That's what we're going to talk about here. Hello, right? Yes, that's what we're going to talk about with Angela. Angela, are you there? She's coming. She's getting ready here, taking off her badge, and she's about to sit here in our studio in the Jornada Infinita studio. Here, please, to my left, Angela. Welcome. How are you? All good? Welcome. Thank you. Let's see if the microphone is working. Please speak into the microphone. Hi, 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 hi. Hi, Angela. I'm fine. The microphone drops a bit.
No, right?
You can tilt it down a little bit if you want, but it seems to me that the distance there, look.
It's just that I'm short.
But the chair is great. Is it comfortable, Angela?
It's fine. Well,
let's talk about Kolbe Art and not just the company. But I was making an introduction here to bring you in about this challenge, it seems to me, which is your commitment. You have a commitment to faith.
yes.
But at the same time, you are representing a company that creates artistic works. So I wanted to start with that challenge. How do you face this challenge, and how did you start? How did you set yourself this challenge of solving this puzzle?
There's always some pain, right, that pushes us to look for a solution and not give up because we have faith. And we believe that art saves, and it can, whether in music, in film, or in theater. So art can turn pain into joy, into a victory, and we truly believe in that. So the mission of Kolbe Arte was created precisely to create, or at least try to create in Brazil, and I believe it's succeeding, a culture that values Catholic content. And when I say Catholic, I mean the stories of saints, the many stories about Our Lady, and bringing into this context real stories that are truly meant to be a testimony for us. Brazilian society, which is so religious, but in this part of cinematography, in the film industry, there is nothing for Catholics. So we have been building this out of that pain because we didn't have this kind of content that could go to theaters, commercial cinema that could really bring 100, 200, 300,000 people to movie theaters, especially after the pandemic. So on this journey of distributing this content, which even today is still mostly foreign, but we are starting to have some Brazilian productions here. So it's been very, very interesting.
It was a necessity and it became a mission.
Exactly. It was a necessity because of this pain, and today it's a mission because we understood what these stories are. And so I think I'm also talking here to the audience that follows the project, right, with Jornada Infinita, which also tells stories. And I think these stories make us stronger. And our society, I can speak more about Brazil, it is very wounded because of so many difficult things that happen in families, right, and in society as a whole. And I think that when you see stories of overcoming, of forgiveness, of new beginnings, of real faith, you feel stronger. So this has been very good, very pleasant.
Angela, and what would you say was the most challenging work? The one that was the most moving or the most difficult that you all have produced?
Kolbe Arte is now establishing itself as a production company, right? But our initial mission is not to produce, it's to distribute, yes. So let's say the most challenging one was the first one. The first one, because it's called Two Crowns, the story of Saint Maximilian Kolbe, who inspired our name.
That's when it all started.
That's when it all started. Everything started there because the film industry here in Brazil didn't believe in it, right? And we had a huge challenge, and today we already have 7 years of history since that was in 2019. And now we understand that the power of the rosary, for example, which is still showing in some theaters, made a huge impact. So we believe that we have to persevere.
And what are the other projects? What's coming next?
We are involved in the film project about Venerable Guido Schaefer. It's a pretty big production in Brazil. It's produced by Camisa Listrada, and we will distribute it together with Dantau in 2027. Jaime Monjardim is the director of the movie. So it's a very interesting movie. And to be released now in the second half of the year, we have one about the Sacred Heart and also a movie about a priest, which is very connected to Canção Nova, to the charismatic renewal. So we have these projects lined up, among others.
This one about the Sacred Heart of Jesus, what is it like?
Is it French?
Was it released? It's that production that was already made.
It's a production that was made in France, released in France last year. It brought 500,000 people to the cinema. The directors are arriving here in Brazil, and we're going to experience this journey in August.
I'm looking forward to this one.
Angela, we're talking about your audience, the Kolbe audience. It's a community audience. At least originally, since we were talking about a pain point, a need, and then a mission. But at the same time, you see yourself overcoming barriers. Let's use barriers because after all, it's a term everyone will understand. The barriers of this community and talking to other people, right?
We've already been experiencing this, right? We've been participating in ExpoCine for 3 years. It's the biggest trade show for exhibitors and distributors here in the state of São Paulo, or maybe I could even say in Brazil. It's a major networking event, and we've been there for 3 years. And this year, for example, the board of ExpoCine invited us to help create a panel about religious cinema. So we understand that we got it. In a way, we, in the market and in other environments, are already having conversations.
And there are challenges there, I imagine, and you're the one who's going to tell me if I'm right or wrong, which is you can divide cinema, at least for those who don't know. I don't even think this division exists. But for those who study cinema a little, the difference between commercial cinema and auteur cinema, we can put it that way, to simplify, right, Doctor? What is it like to talk to these two? It seems like oil and water, they don't mix because the commercial side says, nah, these people are arrogant, these people live in their own bubble. And the art house crowd see the commercial side as, no, that's not cinema, that's not art. It's cinema, but it's not art, right? And then you come in with a proposal that's neither one thing nor the other. It's an experience rooted in need and pain, right? So, how do you approach those people, those two groups fighting, and come in with something completely different?
We actually went through this in 2021 because the movie theaters were still closed, because we had a pandemic, and the movie industry was struggling, right? Since it had been closed for over a year. And we approached a major movie theater chain and made this proposal. Look, we have this content, which was a film called Burning Heart, produced in Spain. And I said, look, we have this content and I would like to know if you have space for it in your circuit. They offered, look, if you have connections, if Kolbe has connections with the church and you can guarantee me a few screenings, I'll make room. And this chain opened up and it worked out really well. So what did we build together with them in the first 6 months? We realized that if we were going to have our movies in the best competitive time slots at night on Mondays and Tuesdays, I wouldn't have to compete with the majors, you know, with Disney and all those big studios. So we went there for Monday and Tuesday. There were nights when this same network had 12,000 people on a Monday in WOW in 20 theaters. I said, hey, wait, what's this? And then that made the market look at us and say, no, wait a minute, this gets results. So the market, as you said, which is the exhibitor, thinks a lot about financial return. We need it, but our main goal is evangelization. And above all, to give Catholics this opportunity. For Catholics to go to the movies, and many times they... And another difference that I can say with a lot of confidence today. We have brought to the movies people who don't usually go to the movies. And for the movie theater exhibitor, that's wonderful because commercially speaking, it's a ticket they wouldn't have sold if it were another movie.
And then I get into another discussion that's very interesting. Angela, since you mentioned the pandemic period as a turning point, and for everyone, the pandemic was a turning point, regardless of their field of work, regardless of their faith. And it's at this stage of the 21st century that we see a shift where people gradually stop going to the movies, first because of the pandemic, and then why? Because there's streaming, there's the smartphone, right? There are other options. So you're entering a market that's going through a transformation, and we don't know what the future will be like. So I wanted you to talk a little about that, because at the same time you have to think about showing it on screen. You also have to think about delivering it for streaming too, right? On subscription platforms and so on, right?
But it was exactly during my experience in 2017 in Poland when I found out that there was production in Poland, in Spain, in the United States, in other countries. Truly Catholic productions made by Catholics or even by secular production companies investing in religious themes. And I thought, why not have it? Why not have it? This was before the pandemic.
Why not in Portuguese?
Right? Why not release this content here in theaters too? Because over there it was in theaters. And that's when I realized that there wasn't this distribution, this bridge between the producer and the exhibitor, which is the distributor itself. We started this in 2019, and that was the best year for cinema in Brazil.
Of all years, right?
Yeah, that year, right? Then that happened, and we thought, no, so let's create a streaming platform. But Lumine already existed, which was a partner because it already had 2 crowns. But even so, we considered it. But our hearts didn't burn, like it burned in the sense of, no, this isn't where you need to go. And in that year and a half, from 2020 to 2021, halfway through 2021, we didn't know what was going to happen. And we had that in our hearts, me and 2 other people at that time. So we understood that it was important to keep going, and it worked out. So today, when you bring that up, right? How does the streaming window work for you with commercial cinema undergoing change? I see that 2023 was a very important year for us. We had 4 releases out of the 4. Das 4, 3. It made a huge difference in the market's average ticket price. We became a talking point at the Campos do Jordão Winter Festival. Who is Kolbe Arte? What are they up to? Are they doing something alternative? Yes. That had never existed before. An evangelical friend who's been in the business for years told me, congrats, I never had the courage to do what you're doing. Releasing a documentary in theaters only on Mondays and Tuesdays. And shaking up the market, right? In that specific area. So that's it. Now we have this important partnership with the biggest exhibitors. And we also have the understanding and awareness, for example, this partnership with PAS, with religious people, with local leaders, of bringing the parish to the cinema. Then streaming will definitely come, but this faith experience is being created in the cinema.
And I'll keep this brief and ask you, Angela, to talk about the audience profile. Are we talking about a specific age group, a specific socioeconomic group? Regional issues as well. Obviously, you have to start in the big markets, right? In the big cities, but then it spreads out. So how did this audience mapping begin, and how is it going now?
Yeah, the vast majority today are still women aged 30 and up. But it depends on the content, okay? For example, if you have a documentary, Carla Curtis content works. Adult-oriented content works too. But the majority is young people, right?
So if you have those who identify.
Right? If you have a movie about Saint Joseph, the majority are families. And then everyone goes together. So similar to that, but most are still women over 30. The place where we have the biggest audience is in the Northeast. The Northeast is really strong. In the South, we still need to do more work. And there, regarding the socioeconomic class, let's say, I think it's an average for Brazil. However, it's interesting that there are some upper class groups who are actually getting organized, holding screenings, and requesting the film at that cinema near the parish, near the community. And getting involved as well, wanting to know and being interested in how we can improve this. How can we encourage it? Then comes another avenue we're starting to dream about now, right? Which is really creating mechanisms for us to raise funds without depending on incentive laws, because it's more complex for this kind of content. So that we can support the producer and produce more here. Because then it will become a whole production chain, and in 10, 15, 20 years we can say that Brazil has a Catholic content industry, right?
That's really cool. Before we say goodbye, Angela, I'd like you to introduce Kolbe and tell those watching our live how they can find your work, Kolbe's work, website, social media, and everything else.
But also to know what the proper training is for those who want to participate, who want to join, who want to experience all of this, right? Is there a specific training? What is it?
Okay. Kolbe Art has a website at kolbeart.com.br. We also have our Instagram, which is the same name. We always keep our social media very up to date to communicate with our audience, with the public. If I understood, the question is about being part of Kolbe Art or the industry and participating.
It's
quite broad, right? For example, we're here today at the ExpoCatólica, right? And tomorrow, at our second forum on cinema, we will have 5 special guests who are voice actors. Voice actors of the highest level, right? And they are actors. So, like, you have training in directing, you have a knack for writing scripts, for creating storylines. I think this is very open. And today, like I said, there isn't really a Catholic sector, right? Where you can just go and say, look, I have this project. We're trying to put it together. So I think that like actors, actresses, screenwriters who want to and are interested in following this path can reach out to Kolbe because we understand what they want at this moment. That's it. Recommend? We have many partnerships with production companies that are also seeing the importance of Catholic religious cinema in Brazil. So at this moment, great.
Angela Moraes, CEO of Kolbe Arte, visited us here on our live stream. Thank you very much. Until next time, let me greet you in person.
Thank you all.
And I'm going to give you a gift. It was supposed to be a surprise, but it showed up here on the table, right? Thank you very much.
Professor, from our sponsor.
Thank you very much, really. And good work and good luck.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of the show. Thank you. Very good.